L'chaim L'vracha. Good Erev Yom Tov. Tomorrow night is Yutas Kislev, what is known as Rosh Hashanah L'Chasidus. And it was a letter that the Rebbe Rashab, Rabbi Shem Tov Library, so he wrote a letter in Kislev of 1901, Tafrei Samach Beis, where he introduced this idea that Yutas Kislev is Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus. In fact, he wrote it in a softer way. He wrote V'karev loymar. It would appear to be that Yutas Kislev is Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus. And when this letter was later reprinted by the Rebbe in Hayom Yom, so the Rebbe omitted the words V'karev loymar and just Yutas Kislev is Rosh Hashanah l'Chasidus. But the interesting story is that although that there were many who mocked this idea that there could be a fifth Rosh Hashanah, we know the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah talks about 4 Rosh Hashanahs. Yeah. The Chassidim in Vilna, the letter was written. The letter from the Rebbe Rashab is dated Tes Zayin Kislev. So the Chassidim in Vilna did not receive this letter until after Yutas Kislev, and they were very upset that they had not celebrated Rosh Hashanah, the Yom Tov, properly. So they went to Reb Chaim Oizer, who was the Rav in Vilna, and they asked Reb Chaim Oizer, what do we do? And Reb Chaim Oizer, he told them they have to make a farbrengen to make up for the farbrengen that they lost out, another farbrengen for Yutas Kislev. So Reb Chaim Oizer didn't take it lightly, this idea. So it's a special day, just like Rosh Hashanah, as we've discussed on different occasions. Rosh Hashanah is not only the beginning of the year, it is the head of the year. The head meaning it contains the energy for the entire year, and all the energy goes through it. So all the energy that we have for the entire year for learning Chassidus and for acting in the pathways of Chassidus, all we get from this today. So we should maximize it. We are starting already our preparations today, but especially over the Shabbos and the Sunday, to maximize the time. L'chaim L'vracha.
Moses was Chassidish?
Not at all.
That's what
I
mean. So how did he come to...
There was a very, very close friendship between the Gedolim, the Chassidim and the non-Chassidim at that time. All the Gedolim, Reb Chaim Brisker and the Chafetz Chaim, Reb Chaim Oizer, and the Rebbe Rashab, later the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was put in prison because of the Hisnagdus, because of the opposition of what we called Misnagdim. And there was quite a few years, quite a few decades of intense hisnagdus, intense opposition. But then, already towards the beginning of the 19th century, already talking about the 1820s, 1830s, so the hisnagdus pretty much went away. And the Chassidish Gedolim and the Chassidish Rebbes and what we call the Litvish Gedolim, they all worked together on a very friendly basis for all of for the Tzarkei HaKlal. They worked together. They realized that they're not enemies of each other. There are bigger enemies out there. The enemies were the Haskalah movement, and they united together in many ways in order to fight their common enemies. And the Hisnagdus really disappeared until it reappeared sometime in the 20th century. But there was a good 100 years when the Hisnagdus was pretty much non-existent. And there was a genuine mutual respect between the Chassidish Gedolim and the Yeshivish Litvish Gedolim.
In the 20th century, there was Hisnagdus?
In the late 20th century, so yeah, it got reawakened. There's politics, and in Israel, I don't want to get into speaking Hepech, the Shvach of Yidden, but yeah, it was awakened at a certain amount of time. It has weakened once again, but it did flare up again. Yeah.
I lived through that. I didn't see any of that. I mean, that was...
No, you are fortunate. Yeah. So, as you all know, for those of you who have been here for a long time, we try to connect the Tanya class to the Parsha of the week and the times. So we don't get better than this. We're holding on page 206. We're going to learn a little Tanya. Maybe we'll bring a little afterwards. Page 206. And this is a letter that the Alter Rebbe wrote, as you see over here in the caption on top. Achar biyasi mePeterburg. This was written shortly after the Alter Rebbe arrived back from Petersburg. what we call Peterburg. That's what's in Yiddish, in Peterburg. In other words, right after Yutes Kislev, the Alter Rebbe was released from prison on Yutes Kislev. He was taken to Peterburg, taken to Petersburg, and he was taken immediately after Sukkot, and he spent 53 days in prison. One day, according to the Messiah of Chassidim, one day for every Perek in Tanya. There are 53 Prakim in Likutei Amar.
Prison was in Petersburg?
Yeah, that was the capital.
That's a big city.
Yeah.
Up north.
It's known as St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg.
Yes. We try not to say the full name because it has Catholic implications.
Yeah.
That's something the Rebbe was very careful about. For example, if you look at any Lubavitch publication, there's S. Francisco. We don't...
S. Francisco.
S.
S, yeah.
S. We don't say the whole name because it's a Catholic saint, so we try to avoid saying it.
I never knew that.
Right, so the same thing is also with... we try to avoid saying the names of Catholic saints, so we call Peterburg.
Petersburg.
Yeah. In Yiddish, it's called Petersburg. So that was the capital. He was taken to the capital of Russia, and he was released on Yutes Kislev. And after he was released, he sent this letter to the Chassidim. So I'll talk about how timely it is. But even more than that, this letter is based on a pasuk in this week's parsha. Katointi mikol hachasadim umikol chulu. This week's parsha. So we don't have to struggle to find the connection to the parsha this week, like sometimes we do. It's this whole Tanya, this whole letter is based on this pasuk. So let me, before we continue, we have this pasuk. What's the background of this pasuk? So Yaakov is returning from his stay by his father-in-law Lavan, and he finds out that his brother Esav doesn't exactly love him, and in fact is coming and planning on greeting him with an army of 400 men. And Yaakov prepares for this confrontation in a variety of ways. Yaakov, he prepares by sending his brother a gift. He prepares for battle. He divides the people who are with him into two camps. And last, but certainly not least, Yaakov Avinu, he davens to Hashem. And in his tefillah to Hashem, Yaakov Avinu says, Katointi mikol hachasadim umikol ha'emes asher asisai mavdecha. I am small from all of the kindness and all the truths that you have done with your servant. Ki b'makli avarti sayardin hazeh. Because when I arrived, when I crossed, when I was running away from Esav, I crossed and I only had a stick. That's all I had. I had literally nothing, I had virtually nothing with me. I had a stick. But now, as they say, bli ayin hara, take a look. I have so many people that I divide them into two camps. So Yaakov says, Hashem, you have done so much kindness for me and so much truth for me. And katointi, I am small. But what is the exact meaning of the katointi over here? So there's a machlokes between Rashi and the Ramban. Rashi says, because the words, I am small from all of the kindnesses, what does that mean? I'm small from all of the kindnesses and the truths they have done for me.
Humble.
So 1 second. So Rashi says, katointi means not I am small, but nisma tu zichi yosei. That because of all the kindnesses that you've done for me, I have less chusim, I've used up my chusim, and that's why I'm worried about my brother Esav, this confrontation. I'm worried that I've depleted my chusim to the point that I'm not deserving anymore of a nest to save me from my brother Esav.
It's less emuna. There's less emuna.
It's not less amunah. He had a perfect amunah on Hashem, but he believed that because of all the kindnesses that Hashem had done to him, that his bank account was on zero. Yeah. So katointi, my zchusim are small, mikol hachesed, because of all the chesed that you've done for me. That's the way Rashi understands it. The Ramban doesn't he doesn't like Rashi's approach, and he offers a different pirush. And the Ramban says, katointi, I am small, not my zchusim. Rashi says that means I am small. Rashi says that it means that my zchusim are small. Rashi says it's like imagine you work in a company. And you ask your boss, help me, I need a bonus. I need a Yom Tov bonus. Okay, he gives it to you. I need help with this. I need this favor, I need that favor. I want a vacation. I can't do this or that. And the boss is very nice. At a certain point, you feel like you can't ask anymore. You've depleted your credit is gone, right? That's the way Rashi understands it. The Ramban says, Katointi, I am small, Mikol HaChasadim, from being deserving of all the kindness. In other words, Yaakov is turning to Hashem and saying, you've done so much kindness for me, but Katointi, I don't believe that I'm worthy of it. I'm too small to have earned and be worthy of all the kindnesses that you've done for me. Like sometimes in our lives, we have something very, very special, and sometimes you scratch your head and you wonder, why am I deserving of this? Why did I earn this? And that's what Yaakov was saying. He looks back and says, "Kibemakli avarti yisei Yarden, across the Yarden with only a stick. Take a look where I am now. Katointi, I don't understand why I deserve this. It's too good." So again, according to Rashi, Katointi means my zchuyis mikol hachasadim, because my zechusim are small because of the chasadim. According to Rabban, Katointi, I am small mikol hachasadim, from being worthy of all of the zechusim. As we will see, the Alter Rebbe in this letter is going to offer a third pirush. He's going to offer a third pirush in the pasuk, a pirush which we'll see combines Rashi and the Ramban. But before we get to seeing how the Alter Rebbe understands the pasuk, let's give a little background over here. So, as we mentioned, this letter was written shortly after Yutas Kislev. Yutas Kislev is when the Alter Rebbe was liberated from prison. The Alter Rebbe was arrested on trumped-up charges. And they were very, very serious charges. The Alter Rebbe was taken from the city of Liozna, where he was taken to the capital city in what is known as the Schwarze Wagen, a black wagon which was reserved for people who were accused of treason. And I don't think it takes much imagination to realize that in the times of the Tsar, if you were accused of treason, the ending usually wasn't too good. It was definitely a capital crime. And the Alter Rebbe was in incredible personal danger, mortal danger. And he was released on Yutas Kislev, free, completely exonerated. You can only imagine the exhilaration of the Hasidim, how excited they were, how happy they were, how elated they were. And it's not only that the Alter Rebbe dodged the bullet, the Chassidim dodged the bullet. Because the Alter Rebbe was taken as the representative of the Chassidim, as the leader of the Chassidim. Had Chas v'Shalom the Alter Rebbe been found guilty, it wouldn't only have been only the Alter Rebbe who would have suffered the consequences, but there would have been a crackdown on all the Chassidim, because that would have meant that the entire movement of Chassidus would have been declared a treasonous movement. So it wasn't just the Alter Rebbe, it was actually a very dangerous time for the whole Kahal, Adas Chassidim, for all the Chassidim. Which again brings us to realize just how joyful the Chassidim must have been. You know, the Alter Rebbe was accused of numerous things. One of the things he was accused of was sending money to the Ottoman Empire. He was accused literally of supporting the enemy. At that time, the Tsar was at war with the Ottoman Empire. I don't know if they were literally at war, but they were not in a peaceful, not in a situation of peace. They were enemies, and the Alter Rebbe was accused of aiding and abetting the enemy by sending money. Now, what really was the story? The story was that Alter Rebbe was sending money to Eretz Yisrael, to the Chassidim in Eretz Yisrael. And at that time, the Eretz Yisrael was under Ottoman rule. Now, where did the money come from? From the Chassidim. So imagine had the Alter Rebbe been found guilty. So what's the next thing you do? You go and you find who are the ones who are sending the money, who was contributing the money towards the Ottoman Empire. It was a time of incredible danger for the Chassidim. And in fact, there were many Chassidim who were arrested along with the Alter Rebbe at the same time. Chassidim in Vilna. In addition to the physical element of the great Hatzalah of Yutas Kislev, which in and of itself is already enough, the Chag HaGeula of the saving of the life of the Alter Rebbe and the Chassidim, there was also, a very strong spiritual element over here. And this is something which is a very big mesorah by Chassidic Chabad, that the Alter Rebbe being put into prison, it wasn't stam, okay, there was some people down over here weren't happy and they decided to make some trouble. We know nothing happens by mistake. And everything is coordinated and orchestrated from above. And the reason why the Alter Rebbe was put in prison, as was explained by the Chabad Rebbes that follow, is because there was a kitrug in heaven. There was a prosecution, an indictment in heaven against the Alter Rebbe. There was something real going on. There was a real issue, which was, we know that the Alter Rebbe took the wellsprings of Chassidus, the wellsprings that were taught by the Baal Shem Tov and were taught by the Maggid. And the Alter Rebbe taught them to the masses. He took the deepest ideas in Chassidus and he taught them to everyone. And that's not something which was the derech of the other Talmidim of the Maggid. This was, the Alter Rebbe was unique in that way. The other Talmidim of the Maggid believed that the Rebbe has to know a lot of Chassidus and a lot of Kabbalah, and to the Chassidim you give bite-sized nuggets, inspirational, short ideas.
Tipin, tipin.
What tipin tipin? Yukach na ma'at mayim. A little, give a little water, a little, not too much. Dvash uchalav tachas l'sheinecha. It's to be hidden. You know, one of the big opponents of the Alter Rebbe was the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. His name was a big Rebbe. His name was Reb Baruch of Mezhebush, and he was a big opponent. Not that he was chas v'shalom opposed to the Torah of the Alter Rebbe, but he was opposed to the mass dissemination of the Mayonos, of the wellsprings of Chassidus.
What is the problem with that?
The problem with that
I don't
is
see that.
you have to remember, there's a reason why Kabbalah was hidden for many generations. It's a reason why it's called Soides HaTorah, the secrets of Torah, because it's the highest level of Torah. You have Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Soid. Soid corresponds to the world of Atzilus. It's the unfiltered, uncensored secrets of Hashem. And in heaven they were like, well, the Alter Rebbe is going a little too far. He's going a little too far. So therefore, we have to stop this whole thing and we have to reevaluate and see whether the Alter Rebbe's way is justified or not, whether he should be allowed to continue in this derech or not. And the 53 days that the Alter Rebbe spent in prison was a time when in heaven they were working out this indictment. Yutes Kislev, the day when the Alter Rebbe was freed, wasn't only a physical liberation, but that was also the green light given from heaven and saying, okay, we reviewed the case, we audited you, we reviewed the case, and you're good to go. You're good to go. And as the Messiah is that actually the Baal Shem Tov, and the Maggid, they both visited the Alter Rebbe in prison. And the Alter Rebbe told them, you know, should I continue when I leave prison? Should I continue doing what I'm doing? And they said, well, I don't know. We don't know if you should have started. But once you started, keep on going and do it even more. So it was also a very big ruchniistic victory, a victory for the derech of the Alter Rebbe, the derech of Chassidus. And we can imagine how excited the Chassidim were. But it wasn't only excited. You could imagine also they were smug.
What's that?
What does smug mean?
Yeah. Snub?
No, smug. S-M-U-G. You could imagine that the Chassidim, when they woke up in the morning, they went to shul and they bumped into their fellow misnagdim, that they were feeling a little superior.
Oh, yes.
Right? This letter from the Alter Rebbe is a direct letter addressing this point. And by the way, this is one of a series of letters the Alter Rebbe wrote, warning the Chassidim not in any which way, not to celebrate. In other words, you can celebrate, but not to reitzon. They say in Yiddish. How do you say? Not to antagonize, not to gloat, not to feel superior, to remain humble. And in general, the Alter Rebbe wrote, as I mentioned, many letters the Alter Rebbe writes to the Chassidim. And you have to remember, the Chassidim at that time were, unfortunately, this is a historical fact, they were victimized by the opponents of Chassidim financially and physically. They were assaulted sometimes. There was tremendous redifus, government persecutions that they did through the governments. They would go and they would... you have to remember that most of the established communities were run by non-Chassidim. And they had clout, they had power in the government. And the Chassidim were very persecuted. And there are many letters where the Alter Rebbe would write, relax, don't try to, don't respond, don't be goaded into saying anything or doing anything. Just remain humble and love. Just love every single Yid. And as Alter Rebbe is going to end this letter, Kamam hapanim lapanim, that when you show love to others, they'll show love back to you. So this is a letter where the Alter Rebbe is urging his Chassidim to celebrate, but with restraint and with humility, and not chas v'shalom to use this as a cudgel. Oh, take a look, we won. That's really what this letter is all about. And the Alter Rebbe begins with the words Katointi Mikol HaChasadim. Now the Alter Rebbe was released on Yutes Kislev, which that year was on the Tuesday of Parshas Vayishlach, Yutes Kislev. So we don't know, this letter isn't dated, we don't know the exact date when the Alter Rebbe wrote the letter, but the fact that the Alter Rebbe bases his letter on the words Katointi leads us to believe it probably was written in the immediate days following his release from prison while it was still Shabbos Parshas Vayishlach. It's an assumption, but that would make sense that Alter Rebbe would begin with a pasuk from the parsha of that week. And the Alter Rebbe is going to introduce us to a new understanding of the pasuk of Kotanti. And let's do this inside. Pirush, this means every single kindness that Hashem does for a person has to make a person to be very humble. The Alter Rebbe is telling us that you have to be, when Hashem does kindness to you, you have to be humble, not despite the kindness, but because of the kindness. Kindness of Hashem. When Hashem does chesed with you, the result of that ought to be a greater humility. Katointi, why am I small? Mikola chasadim umikola emes. Because Hashem does chesed with me, that is why I am humble and that is why I am small. You see how that's halfway there Rashi and halfway there Ramban? Mm-hmm. The Ramban is the one who says Kotanti means I am small. So the Alter Rebbe is embracing the pirush of the Ramban on Kotanti. Mikola chasadim mikola emes. Rashi is the one who learns as a result of the kindness. Rashi learns my zechusim are small as a result of my kindness. Ramban learns I am small and therefore I'm not worthy of the kindness. The Alter Rebbe, I am small as a result of the kindness. It's a hybrid between the pirush of the Rashi and the pirush of the Ramban. If we had a whiteboard over here and we do the Rashi and Ramban, you'd see how the Alter Rebbe is embracing the pirush of the Ramban on the word Kotanti and the pirush of Rashi on the words Mikala Chasad and Mikala Emes. You guys see what I'm talking about? It's a third pshat in the pasuk. I am small because of the chasadim that Hashem. Because every time that Hashem does a chesed with me, that makes me smaller, that makes me more humble. Why is that? Why is it that when Hashem does a kindness, it makes you smaller? Because, by the way, it's not natural. Naturally, when a person is the beneficiary of kindness, it actually makes them more arrogant. Take a look at people who have been blessed with wealth, or anything else, or prestige, or honor, and it gets to their head. They're like, "Wow, I must be so special. Must be something really special, right?" There's a joke, right? Look how deserving I am that I get all this money and I have all these brachas. There's a story there's a joke about a person who was wealthy and then he lost all his money, and he turns one day to one of his friends and he says, I get it, I lost my money. I get it. But how did I lose my sense of humor? When I was when I was rich, I used to make jokes and everyone used to laugh. Now I make jokes and no one laughs anymore. What happened to my sense of humor? When people become rich, they think that they think they're wise and they think they're smart and they think they're holy and they think that they have a good sense of humor. They're busy giving advice to everyone because they have good advice. They have a good voice also. There's a story about there was a town, and the town was populated by chassidim of a tzaddik whose name was Rameir of Premishlan. And in this city there was a wealthy person, and this wealthy person decided that he had a very good voice, so he's going to be the chassan, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And no one had the courage or the guts or the chutzpah to tell him, excuse me, you don't have a good voice, you can't carry a tune. So for many years he was the chassan. The chassidim couldn't take it. And one day they sent a delegation to the Rebbe. Rebbe, help us out of here. The Rebbe says, you know what, next time the guy comes to me because he's my chassid, I'll take care of it. So the person came next time, and Rebbe says, if you look in Tehillim, there are three types of tefillahs. There's tefillah LeDavid, there's tefillah LeMoshe, and tefillah LeOni. To be a Baal Tefillah, you need to have one of three qualities. You could be a Tefillah LeDavid. David HaMelech was Ne'im Zmiris Yisrael. He had the most beautiful voice that there is. Okay, that's one qualification. If you have that, you can be a chazan. Then there's Tefillah LeMoshe. Moshe was a big tzaddik. We don't know anywhere that Moshe had a great voice, and actually kvad peh. But if you're a tzaddik like Moshe Rabbeinu, you can also be the tefillah. The third option is tefillah la'ani. You could be a poor person, even if you're not such a big tzaddik, and even if you're not such a good voice, but because you have a broken heart, you're a poor person, so you can be the chazan. So the tzaddik said to this guy, listen, a voice like David HaMelech you don't have, and I don't think I can arrange that for you. A tzaddik like Moshe Rabbeinu, you for sure aren't, and again, I can't arrange that for you either. That leaves me one option. If you want to remain to be the chazan, I could arrange that it should be a tefillah la'ani. I should arrange that you should be an ani, become a poor person. The guy said, Shikoyach Rabbi, you know what? I think I'll let someone else be the chazan. But that's the nature. The nature is that the more blessings that we have, we become more arrogant. We feel that we must be so deserving and so talented. But the Rebbe says that's not the way in Kedusha. In Kedusha, the way it's supposed to be. And the way it works is that the more chesed you become, the more chesed you receive, the more humble you become. And why is that? 3 lines from the top. Ki chesed roi yemina, because chesed is Hashem's right hand. The yeminoi, and the Eibishter's right hand, tichapkeini, Hashem's right hand hugs me, meaning that when you're getting chesed from Hashem, what's actually happening is Hashem hugging you. When Hashem does kindness with you, it's Hashem hugging you. Shehi b'chinas kirvas alikim mamish. It's closeness to Hashem, biyeser se'es milafonim, so much more powerful than it was beforehand. When Hashem does chesed with you, it's closeness of Hashem. You know, when a person gets a gift, so if you're shallow and immature, you appreciate the gift. If you're a little deeper, then you appreciate the love.
What do you mean by deeper?
A deeper person, a little kid gets a lollipop, they're excited about the lollipop.
Yeah.
But imagine someone gives you a gift. Imagine someone special gives you a gift.
Me.
Unexpectedly, yeah. Are you touched? Imagine he gave you a gift, a nice watch. Are you like, wow, watch? I have a watch now, a beautiful watch. Or like, you're touched by the love. You're touched by the love. The line I heard once, something about, don't pay so much attention to the gift of the lover. Pay attention to the love of the giver. It's the love that counts. It's the love that matters. That's
Behind
why.
the watch.
And what?
Behind the watch.
Right, and that's why when you give a gift, you have to give a card with it.
Oh.
Well, I have to give the card for him. Give you a beautiful gift, a beautiful pair of earrings. What do you want the card? The gift is the gift. But more important than the gift is the love that goes into the gift. When we get a gift from Hashem, when we get a chesed from Hashem, are we blinded by the gift? Or are we recognizing the yiminai tichabkeni, the embrace of Hashem, the kirvas alikim, the love of Hashem, and the closeness of Hashem that's in there? And that's something, whenever we experience a kindness, we need to take the time to think about that. This is Hashem showing me His love. Hashem showing me His closeness. V'chol hakarev el Hashem biyeser se'es v'hagbel amayla mayla, whoever is closer to Hashem, in a more powerful way and in a higher way, tzarech liyes yeser shfal ruach lamata mata. The higher the love, the higher the closeness, the lower and the more humble that you have to be. As the pasuk says, Meirochik Hashem nirali, which literally means Hashem appeared Himself to me from a distance. But the way the Alter Rebbe is understanding it, when Hashem is nirali, when Hashem shows Himself to me, the result is supposed to be that I feel meirochik, I feel distant. Not that I feel arrogant, but I feel humble, I feel distant. Why is that? Why is Hashem's chesed humbling? Why is being close to Hashem humbling? As is known, the kulak hamei dafke kolech shiv, that before Hashem everything is considered as nothing. Ve'im kain, and if so, kol shu kamei yoiser, whoever is closer to Hashem, hu ki yoiser kolei va'ayin ve'efes, becomes even more insignificant and more nullified and more humble and more bottle. The truth is that Einod Movade, there's nothing other than Hashem. So think about it. If there's nothing other than Hashem, why do I feel myself to be something? Not only do I feel myself to be something, but I consider myself to be something important and significant. The answer is because I'm distant from Hashem. The closer I get to Hashem, that means the closer I am getting to the truth of Einod Movade, the more humble I become. It's like a mountain. The farther away you are from a mountain, the smaller the mountain looks, and the bigger you feel. Go to a mountain, stand right at the base of the mountain, and wow, the mountain is huge, and you feel
Nothing.
utterly insignificant. Same thing is with Hashem. I remember actually, maybe years ago, I taught in a yeshiva, and they took the Bachram skiing in the winter. So I was a teacher, so I went along. I remember we came in a bus, and we pull into the parking lot. And we're still somewhat of a distance away from the mountains, but I see them in front of me. See the mountains, and I see the people whizzing down on their skis. Anyone here has gone skiing before? See the people whizzing down on their skis? And I'm like, that's easy. What's the big deal? Yeah, they're on the skis and they're going. I really thought it would be no big deal. And then I went into the mountain. And then they have what's called a bunny hill. Bunny hill is a small little hill where beginners practice. And I went up the bunny hill. I'm like, I'm not going down this. There's no way I'm doing this. And then when I went out there, I had a different respect for those huge slopes and people just navigating them. Yeah, but when you're far away, it looks easy. When you're right there, it's like, wow, this is big. When you're far away from Hashem, you have to realize it's yesh mi ayin. We're something from nothing. And the question that's asked in Chassidus is, what do you mean we're something from nothing? The other way around. We're nothing from something. Hashem is something. We're nothing. Why do we talk about creation as being yesh mi'ayin, something from nothing, when really it's the other way around? And the answer is, yeah, that's our perception. The truth is that we're ayin and Hashem is yesh. But the way we look at it, it's the other way around. But the closer we get to Hashem, the closer we come to the realization that He's the yesh and we're the ayin. So if we use the chesed as an opportunity, and realizing this is closeness to Hashem, that actually makes us more humble, because the closer you are to Hashem, kula kamei kolech shiv. Before Him, everything is nothing. If I'm before Him, if I'm kamei, if I'm close to Him, standing before Him, it causes me to be humble. The greatest illustration of this idea is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu achieved heights never achieved before, and as the Torah says, not achieved afterwards either. V'diber Hashem el Moshe ponim el ponim kasher yedaber ish el re'eu. When you read those words in the Torah, chaptat siter, you tremble. Think about V'diber Hashem el Moshe. Hashem spoke to Moshe ponim el ponim, face to face, kasher yedaber ish el re'eu, like a person talks to his friend. That's a pasuk. If the Torah wouldn't say it, if a pasuk wouldn't say it, and imagine if someone else would say it, you'd patch him in the face for saying that. What are you telling me? You're telling me Hashem spoke to a person face to face like a person talks to his friend? Torah says it. There's another pasuk that says Panei, it's a kasha. But the fact is, this is what the Torah says. And when Aaron and Miriam, both of whom were extremely holy, and they were Nevi'im, and when they thought to compare themselves to Moshe, and therefore, we're married, why isn't Moshe married? They got a tongue lashing from Hashem. Hashem told them, you guys are special, you're Nevi'im, but you're not Moshe. Lo yechein avdi Moshe b'chol beisi nemanhu pel daber boy. You're different. You're different league. So Moshe Rabbeinu was certainly aware of his level, and certainly aware of the fact that he had reached heights which no one ever reached before him, and again, no one will reach after him until Mashiach comes. And yet, the Torah tells about Moshe Rabbeinu that Anav Mikol Adam Asher Apnei Adam, he was the most humble person. And that's an obvious question. How does a person of that magnitude, of that level of greatness, how does he be? Not only is he humble, but the humblest person who ever lived. And obviously different answers are given. But if you understand the idea that we're saying over here, you realize the question isn't a question. The question would be like me asking, why is it that I'm standing outside in 100-degree weather, and I'm in the sun, and I'm wearing a coat, so why is it that I'm hot? The question doesn't make any sense. You're asking me, Moshe Rabbeinu, who was so close to Hashem, so how was he so humble? Well, of course, the closer you are to Hashem, the more humble you are. It's not that, but Moshe Rabbeinu, even though he was such a great Navi, even though he was so close to Hashem, nevertheless he was humble because X, Y, Z, whatever reason you're going to give. And by the way, there are reasons that are given. The way the Alter Rebbe understands it over here, the question doesn't make any sense. How is it that Moshe Rabbeinu was so humble when he was so close to Hashem? No, because he was so close to Hashem, that's why he was so humble.
It's obvious.
Because kula kamei kloch shiv. the closer you are to Hashem, the more batal you are to Hashem. And if we recognize that every single time we do a chesed, every single time that we're the beneficiary of Hashem's chesed, it's Hashem being closer to us. So it's not that we are humble despite the kindness, but actually we're humbled because of the kindness, because of the Kirvat Salikim. And this is what the Alter Rebbe is writing, and obviously as we'll continue, as the letter continues, to his Chassidim, and saying, we just experienced this tremendous chesed from Hashem. This tremendous nest, this tremendous miracle. I was released from prison. It was a hatzalah for me, it was a hatzalah for us, it was a hatzalah for Torah HaChassidus, with such a tremendous chesed from Hashem, so that what the behavior that has to evoke within us, or the feeling that has to evoke within us, is one of humility, not one of superiority, not one of smugness, not one of chas v'shalom, of gaiva, but the contrary, one of bittul and one of humility. V'zuhi b'chenes yamin shebekdusha. This is yamin, the right side, chesed, as it is in kedusha. Mitzvah Hashem, next week we will learn about how chesed and klipa operates differently. But in kedusha, that's the way it operates. The more chesed, the more bittul. The chesed lavram, as we know, the pasuk says, Titein emes liYaakov chesed lavram, that Avram is associated with the midas ha-chesed. And what do we find by Avram? Sha'amar, what does Avram Avinu say? Anochi offer ve'efer, I am but dust and ashes. And the context over there is such an important context also. You know, we have over there, that Hashem is about to destroy Stoim. And Hashem says, Hamachas ani Avram is asher niyos. Am I going to hide from Avram my plans? Ki yidativ, I can't hide from Avram. Ki yidativ, I love Avram. The Ramban understands, yidativ, I love him. So I have to tell him. So Hashem tells Avram Avinu, and Avram, as we know, begins this epic bargaining session with Hashem.
Ulai.
Right? If you, Sasson, you've probably been in some marketplaces in Eretz Yisrael, the shuks over there with the Arabs, and you know how to bargain, right? You don't buy anything without bargaining with them, right?
They love to be bargained.
They love to be bargained with, right? It's part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And this Avram was doing the same thing with Hashem. The bargaining, 50, 45, 40, 30, 30, 20, 10, right? And in the middle, Avram turns to Hashem and says, I'm so sorry for speaking this way, or V'anochi ofar ve'efer. Anochi ofar ve'efer, I'm dust and ashes. What dust and ashes? You should have told Hashem, scroll up a few lines and see what you just said about me. You said you love me, right? I'm not dust and ashes. I'm so important that you couldn't even destroy Stoim without notifying me. And Avram is aware of this. But the fact that ki yidativ, the fact that Hashem knows Avram, he loves Avram and holds him dear, doesn't make Avram more arrogant. To the contrary, it makes him more humble. Because that's the way it is in chesed, in the side of kedusha. The more chesed that we get from Hashem, the more humble that we are. This is where we're going to finish today in the Tanya, and I want to take this and extend this idea a little and talk about Yutas Kislev in a more broad way. There's an interesting sikha from the Rebbe, where the Rebbe talks about the mun. In Parshas Eikev, Moshe is talking to Yidden, and he says, Vayancha, Vayar Ivecha, Hashem afflicted you. Hashem made you hungry, Vayachilcha asamon, and he made you eat the mun. The mun is associated with hunger. Also says, Leman anoischa, leman nasoisecha. It's to afflict you and to test you. We know that in life there are two different types. Before we go there, which is interesting, that the mun is to afflict you. The mun is vayarivecha. The mun makes you hungry. But the truth is, the mun embodied within it two opposites. On the one hand, the man represented the ultimate in wealth. Imagine if you didn't have to worry about food, about having food for your family. Every day you knew you walked out your front door and you have food for your day. Not only do you have food for your day, it's the most perfect food that there is. There isn't even any psoilus in it. Completely 100% absorbed in your limbs because there's no, how do you say psoilus? There's no waste. No waste.
Yeah.
Not only is it the perfect food nutritionally, not only does it not take any work to get it, but you could taste literally any taste you want. Today in the morning you want to have, for breakfast you want to have a burger, that's the man. You want to have fried egg, that's the man. Sushi, it's the man. I don't know if people thought of sushi back at that time, but you want to have gefilte fish, you want to have cholent, whatever,
We have that
cheesecake,
Huh?
whatever you want, whatever. Talk about. Can you get more perfect food than that? Again, no work is invested in it. You don't have to worry about it. That's number one. Number two, it's nutritionally speaking, it's the perfect food.
And it tastes anything what you want.
Sorry? It tastes like anything you want.
But
The Gemara tells us in Yuma, what?
Didn't look like a burger though.
Right. The Gemara tells us in Yuma, not only that, together with the man would come down diamonds. With the man came Avanim Tovius, Tovius and Margalius, precious stones. It's the ultimate wealth. But on the other hand, it's also the ultimate poverty. You have nothing in your cupboard, nothing in your pantry, nothing in your fridge.
No refrigerator.
I have nothing for tomorrow. Utter reliance and utter dependence on Hashem, you have nothing. You have everything and you have nothing. Interesting juxtaposition. It's the perfect food, but you're still hungry because you don't have anything. And also, as you mentioned, the Gemara says, you don't see the food that you're eating.
Got sick and tired of it.
Right? Imagine someone gave you a pill and it tasted like cholent and it made you full. Is that cholent? What?
You get tired of it after a while.
Yeah.
They wanted slug. They wanted beef.
What's with the onion?
What?
There's another point also why it's poor. When you have cholent, you eat your cholent. Imagine if you had mun in front of you and you knew that it could be any of a million different tastes. When you're eating it, you're thinking, oh, but it could be this or it could be that. I'm only maximizing 0.001% of the possibilities.
Potential.
Of its potentials, right? Not even 0.001 is only if that was a finite, but it's infinite, so it's really not even that. So even while you're eating it, you're not fully enjoying it. You realize, I don't have it. I'm eating it, but it's not mine. I have none to put away for tomorrow. I'm only having a 0.01% of it. I don't feel like I own it, like when I have a plate of cholent in front of me and when I have food in my pantry, in my cupboard, in my freezer. So it was the combination of both wealth and poverty. And the Rebbe explains it in the context where he talks about it over there, is that the Yidden were about to enter Eretz Yisrael. We know that there are two nisyonos in general in life, two types of nisyonos. There's the nisyon of Ashirus and there's the nisyon of Anius. There's the nisyon of being wealthy and there's the nisyon of being poor. And each one presents its own challenges. When a person's wealthy, the challenges, as you mentioned earlier, I think it was you, that when people are wealthy tend to think koichi va'itsam yadi asali isachayil azah. You take credit for what you have. Vayishman yeshurun vayivat. Right, when we get fat and we start kicking at Hashem, Hishamar lacha. The pasuk says pantishgach. Right, pantoichal v'savata. You'll eat and you'll be right. You'll have houses and then suddenly you'll say koichi v'itsam yadi. You forget about the Eibishter. They say that min haTorah you have to bench. The brachas before eating are not min haTorah, they're midrabanan. Why doesn't the Torah tell us to make brachas before food? And one of the answers that's given is, before you eat, you don't have to, it's almost like human nature. If I don't have food, I turn to Hashem and say, Hashem, please, I need food. After you eat, it's much rarer to turn to Hashem and say, and to acknowledge and thank Hashem for the food we have. Here the Torah is coming and say, hello. You're not going anywhere. First you have to sit, you have to bench, you have to thank Hashem. That's less natural than the bracha before the food. When we're hungry, we think of Hashem. When we're full, we don't think of Hashem. That's human nature. So that's one nisoyin, is the nisoyin of Ashirus. There's another nisoyin, the nisoyin of Anius, of being poor. Chas v'shalom, a person who's poor. And then you begin to wonder, where is Hashem? Why is He treating me this way? That's another nisoyin. I must say that historically, Yidden have preferred the nisoyin of Anius, of poverty, because it's been considered the easier nisoyin. It's easier to be frum and poor than to be frum and rich. It's either to be a poor tzaddik than a rich tzaddik. The nisoyin of wealth is a more difficult nisoyin. Although the Rebbe, in his style, the Rebbe spoke very differently. In fact, the Rebbe once went to visit the Kapishnitzer Rebbe. We're talking about in the late 1950s. He went to Menachem Ovel, the Kapishnitzer Rebbe, and the topic was this topic about the nisoyin of Anius versus the nisoyin of Ashirus. And the Kapishnitzer Rebbe said, that we prefer the nisoyin of Anius. It's more difficult physically, but at the same time, spiritually, it's easier spiritually to be poor than it is to be rich. And the Rebbe disagreed. The Rebbe said, no, you didn't have to be rich. And actually, the Rebbe didn't leave him go until he got him to agree. The Rebbe said, I need you to agree with me that you didn't have to be rich, not poor. You'd have to agree on this. He didn't want to leave it otherwise. That was very important. That it's a more difficult nisoyin, but still you didn't have to be rich. So as the Yidden were about to go into Eretz Yisrael, and in Eretz Yisrael, once they entered the real life in the real world, because until they went to Eretz Yisrael, it wasn't real life. So they were going to experience both of these nisoyinis, the nisoyin of plenty and the nisoyin of what's the opposite of plenty in English? Of anius in English, the nisoyin of poverty. So the man that Hashem gave them for 40 years in the desert prepared them for both. It was one food which had in it both anius and ashirus, both wealth and poverty. So this way they were prepared, and they were being trained for both the types of nisyonis that they would have when they went into Eretz Yisrael. But the Rebbe then continues, and the Rebbe says, when we're talking about man is lechem. Lechem. It's lechem in Hashemayim. We know that Torah also is called lechem. L'chu lachmecha belachmi, or lachmoi belachmi. There's a pasuk. Torah is compared to bread. So first the Rebbe compares Torah, which is bread, to all other different wisdoms in this world. And says all the other wisdoms of this world, they're limited, whether it's science, whether it's physics, whether it's math, whatever it may be. The wisdoms are limited. So it's like lechem in haaretz. It's like a loaf of bread. You have the piece of bread, you slice it, you eat it, the bowl of shalt in front of you. Makes you feel good. Torah is unlimited. Like the man, which had unlimited potential, the Torah is unlimited. The Torah is lechem in Hashemayim. And therefore, when you learn Torah, it's satisfying and not satisfying at the same time. You know that as much as you learned, you don't really have it. Like the man, right? You don't really have it. It's Hashem's. It's divine wisdom, and you've only scratched the surface of it. And therefore, Torah always leaves you. On the one hand, it is satisfying. It is the best food that there is, the most perfect food that there is, like the man. But it always leaves you hungry, and it doesn't leave you feeling right. And then the Rebbe says, within Torah itself, this is also the difference between Nigla and Chassidus. That within Torah itself, the Nigla element of Torah is lechem min haaretz. Is compared to physical bread, because Nigla Torah, it deals with physical objects. Whereas Pnimius HaTorah, Chassidus, is lechem min Hashemayim. In other words, in comparison to all other wisdoms, so the whole Torah is considered lechem min Hashemayim. But within Torah itself, the Nigla would be called lechem min haaretz, and the Chassidus is called lechem min Hashemayim. How many times have I given a shir over here? And after the shir, I see some people that are shaking their heads like, I don't get this. This is too high. I don't understand. This is so lofty. Okay, so number one, I'm not the greatest teacher. What can I do? Maybe I have to explain the concepts a little better. But the truth is, even if I was the best teacher in the world, ultimately, when you finish learning Chassidus, it's not necessarily a drawback when you say This is so high. I feel like I got 0.01% of it. This is like the mun that has infinite possibilities, and I feel like I scratched the surface on it. And that's why when you learn Chassidus, it leaves you hungry. You feel like I have nothing in my cupboard. I don't own it. Ultimately, I'm studying about concepts which are transcendent, spiritual, holy concepts. It's not like when I sit down, I learn a Gemara, Shnayim Eichzim Betalas. I know what Shnayim are, I know what Eichzim are, I know what Talis is, right? I know what Yachloiku is. All these concepts, I get, okay, Torah is unlimited, there's unlimited within that. But ultimately, at least on the simplest level, I got what I learned, and I got it 100%. I can go to sleep that night feeling somewhat full, feeling somewhat wealthy with the knowledge that I gained. Whereas, when you finish Hashir and Chassidus, and you learned about Atzilus and Chochmah and Tiferes and Yichud Eilah and Yichud Tata, and you're like, oh man, I'm swimming in something which is so beyond me. Yeah, I got a little here, a little there. This is mamish, the experience of eating the man. You're eating a heavenly food, which is an infinite food. You know, it says the man, also the Ramban brings down that this lechem shamalachi hasharas oichlim. The man is literally the spiritual food of the angels, which came down in physical form, but it's oir. The man was oir. You feel like you're eating man. And the end result of that, therefore, is that Chassidus doesn't make you arrogant. This is connecting to what we're talking about over here. The katointi mikol chasadim mikol emes. Because Chassidus is lechem min hashamayim. And because, therefore, when we learn Chassidus, there is that kamei. We are being a little closer to Hashem. All of Torah is Hashem's wisdom. Without any question, without any doubt, all of Torah is Chachmas Yitzcheni Yisbarach. But ultimately, when you're learning a Gemara, when you're learning a Psak Halacha, or a Mishnah, or a Gemara, as it is enclosed in physical things, so it's Hashem's wisdom as it's already wrapped up. It's already packaged in physical packaging. Whereas, when you're learning Chassidus, there's no packaging. No packaging. And that's the kamei. That's the kamei. The Kirvas Alikim is a greater one over there because there is no packaging over there. And what that leads to is a katointi. As opposed to when you sit down and you learn a piece of Gemara, afterwards you feel smug, and you have to learn what that word means, by the way. Smug.
I've never heard it in my life. Smug.
Yes, you have. Come on.
Smug.
Yeah, it's like you're
arrogant.
Yeah, you're arrogant.
And your nose like this and
yeah, a little. Yeah. You feel good about yourself, a little superior, right? That's being smug.
I've noticed that many times.
You finish a Masechta, you feel all smug. Yeah. When you finish learning a Maimer Chassidus, you just feel humble, because you realize you're touching on the surface of something that's so much greater than you. And that, in a way, one of the biggest accomplishments of Chassidus, that's the Diaf Katainti. One of the biggest accomplishments of Chassidus is not only the knowledge that we gain, but the humility that we gain. The humility that we gain when we're learning topics. And believe me, I know I'm sitting here, I'm teaching how many years over here, Tanya, and you look at me and you think maybe I'm the big guru and I understand so much. I understand nothing. Understand nothing. I know nothing, I understand nothing. And the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't understand. The more you realize that.
But you know it by heart.
Sorry?
But you know it by heart.
And you know it by heart, but the concepts that you know, the concepts, was lachst du?
My brother is like half of me as they claim, that was just as they grace.
You want to translate?
It's up to you.
He said, he's quoting someone that says, don't consider yourself to be so, what?
Brother.
His brother says, don't hold yourself so small, you're not that big. In other words, you have to be a big person. Yes.
Well, the more you know,
we spoke about it.
The more you know, the more you understand what you don't know.
Yeah.
So
the ultimate humility, as we mentioned, is Moshe Rabbeinu.
And he knows the Chacham,
right? Because the idea is that the closer you become and the more you learn, actually the more you realize you know nothing. As the famous statement, Tachlis hayediyah shalei nedacha.
You can't come to that unless you engage yourself into more Chacham.
Yeah.
An Amoritz can't feel humble. What's he humble about?
But by the way, you ever heard the expression, a little knowledge is very dangerous? You ever heard that expression?
Yeah.
There are people who know very little and therefore they think they know a lot. The more you know, the more you realize you know nothing. That's it. When you know a little, you think you know. But when you learn more and more, and that's true in all disciplines, how much more so in Torah, because Torah is infinite as opposed to other disciplines which aren't, and how much more so in Chassidus, that it's not only the Chassidus is infinite, but even the very concepts you're learning, and even the very concepts that you think and you feel you know, ultimately, what do you know? It's what's called Yedias, it's called Yedias HaMetzias. You're saying words, you think you understand. Are you really grasping the essence of these spiritual concepts you're talking about? We're nothing. We're nothing. So learning Chassidus leads us to Katointi, leads us to Bittul. And ultimately, that's the purpose. The purpose of everything is not to be, is to this idea of Einad Movadeh, the idea of realizing that the Eibishter is everything, Akula K'mei Kalach Shiva, we're nothing, and that is accomplished through learning Chassidus. The very mere thing, the mere act of sitting down learning Chassidus has a humbling effect, because you're Kamei, you're before the Eibishter, and the closer you are to the Eibishter, the more humble that you become. A good Shabbos, everyone, and have a good Yom Tov. And as I say, L'shana Tova, B'limud Chassidus, B'darki Chassidus, Tikasevu, V'sichasemu. We should have a year of learning Chassidus, and a year of, the main thing is internalizing the ideas of Chassidus and acting according to the dictates of Chassidus. A year of humility, and a year ultimately of the spreading of Chassidus and the coming of Mashiach.